This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Mark Graban about lean in healthcare and manufacturing alike.
Plus, 3 tips to break unproductive habits. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for July 22nd, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
Yeah, you are. And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. Before we get started, remember that you can chat with us at any time. Just click the appropriately named Chat With Us link beneath the player page there. And, things to chat about with us today. Let's go through them. The very first article we're going to talk about is an interview with Mark Graban, and we're going to be talking about Lean, Six Sigma. What's the difference? Do you know what the difference is? Do you care? How does responsibility lead to independence? That's Mike's story. What should leaders do to support quality? Got any opinions on that? What should leaders do to support quality? And finally, what uses can you think of for a 300-foot-long CNC?
Wow.
So if you've got any comments on any of those, just chat them to us, and hey, we'll take a look at them.
That's right.
All right. Well, Lean, Six Sigma, TPS, these terms are often used interchangeably. The definitions of each of those actually seems to be all over the place, and it kind of depends on who you ask, and also how and where these systems or programs should be used seems to be maybe kind of at the whim of the consultant at times. So that is the subject of this week's article from Mark Graban. Lean is about quality, not just speed or efficiency. Mark is also the author of the Shingo Award-winning book, Lean Hospitals, Improving Quality, Patient Safety, and Employee Engagement. And we're pleased to have Mark on our show today to talk about Lean and Six Sigma, as well as some of the challenges of implementing Lean in a healthcare setting. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dirk. Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, now in your article, you talk about the misunderstanding many people have of Lean versus Six Sigma. So in a nutshell, can you just explain the misconceptions?
Yeah, so that main misunderstanding is this, again, incorrect notion that Lean is somehow only about speed, only about efficiency, only about cost, and then people will tack on, that Six Sigma is the only way to improve quality, and I think this is just demonstrably false. If you look at the core of Lean and the Toyota production system, there are 2 pillars: the idea of improving flow, just-in-time production, but there's also the idea of quality at the source. And Lean actually has many different methods, managerial approaches that are really focused on improving quality.
So Mark, you're getting into nuts and bolts right away rather than labels. And as we always say, what's in a name? I mean, does it really matter? Do you think what we call a program as long as it works?
Well, but see, I think that's not really the issue. If people are going to combine, and I think you can and you should combine Lean and Six Sigma, I don't care if you call it Lean Sigma, Six Sigma Plus, Operational Excellence, Process Improvement, PI, CI, that doesn't matter. But I think what does matter is when people say inaccurate things about Lean or TPS. And what I'm talking about, I think the way I react to that, the equivalent would be a Six Sigma Master Black Belt, I think would be rightfully annoyed if somebody from a Lean background started saying things about DMAIC that were incorrect, or explaining multiple regression analysis. I think that's to me, that's the point, not the question of labels. And I would say Lean and Six Sigma are not synonyms. They are complementary practices. They can work together. Six Sigma certainly has different methods and practices to contribute, but I think it's important to keep in mind, again, Lean is about both flow and quality. Those go very much hand in hand.
Well, just to follow up on that a little bit, do you think that, many consultants would say that there's kind of a cultural imperative here, that the words that we choose do matter because it imparts something to the organization, whether you choose to use Lean, whether you choose to use Six Sigma, what those things mean and the terms that you use. So you think it's a valid comment that there are kind of cultural differences that are communicated through those words?
Well, sure. Yeah, I would agree. Words do matter. even though my book is called Lean Hospitals for a number of reasons, including just simplicity. I recommend, and I say this in the book, if I were at a hospital system, I wouldn't necessarily go promoting to everybody that we have a quote unquote lean program. I think terms like continuous improvement or performance excellence or things like that, that articulate a goal are something that people maybe are more likely going to get excited about. The word lean, has a lot of negative connotations to it. I mean, I even recently heard John Shook from the Lean Enterprise Institute sort of lamenting on stage that, well, if I had been there, part of that team that wrote The Machine That Changed the World, I would have argued for a different name other than lean. The word is out there. The word, it's not always helpful, and that kind of puts us in a situation where we have to explain what is meant by that word. For example, lean is not an acronym for less employees are needed. There's that perception. Lean is not mean. We do have to explain what the word means, or maybe use words that are less threatening.
Well, Mark, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, this actually kind of gets us into your book. You are about to release, or actually have released, I believe, the third edition of your Shingo Award-winning book, Lean Hospitals, Improving Quality, Patient Safety, and Employee Engagement. Now, I got to tell you, my wife is a nurse. She saw the book sitting on the tabletop. She saw the title, and she literally sighed, rolled her eyes, and said something like, "Great. Lean hospitals, how to pile on more patients while decreasing staff." Is that a typical response? And if so, how do you deal with that perception?
Well, I think we have to ask why do people react that way? They cross their arms and scowl, and they're hearing about the word. And like I said a minute ago, the word lean doesn't always properly express the positive nature of what lean and TPS really brings to people. I've seen people react that way to any new initiative brought to them by management. And if we ask why, which I think is a good lean habit, why are people reacting that way? A lot of it has nothing to do with lean. It has to do with an environment where there's not a lot of trust of their leaders. People are cynical, they're burnt out, they're skeptical of all the different new initiatives that have been thrown at them. So I think leaders need to have that discussion and explain this is not about getting rid of people. It's not about making you work harder. That's the old approach to healthcare management. But lean, is about engaging people, asking them what gets in the way of them providing ideal patient care, what frustrates them, what are their ideas for improvement. When we can do things that we can't just say, hey, lean is a good thing. We need to demonstrate that. We can get some quick wins, solve some problems, get people involved. That turns the scowl into smiles. And I think we need more smiles in healthcare. We need to free up time so people can provide better quality care. And if being able to see more patients is an end result of reducing waste and making work easier and preventing problems and patients, then people do see through practice that lean is a very positive thing for them and their patients.
I'm glad you touched on management, because one thing I was struck by is in your book you have a chapter on preventing errors and harm, and you give some examples of preventable errors that have led to the death of or harm of patients, and some of these were in the news. Now it's really sad, obviously. I mean, you hear about the death of a child or something, and it's because of a preventable error that happened in the hospital. It's sad for the family, but it's also very often sad for the healthcare workers. Sometimes they're made scapegoats and get prison time for really a problem in the system, a systemic error, as opposed to a willful or egregious misconduct on their part. It's a failure of the system. Talk a little bit about scapegoating within the healthcare, and what problems this actually causes and kind of works against what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's unfortunately one of the long-standing problems in the healthcare culture, and that's true not just here in the U.S. It's true in other modern major countries around the world. So, the thing that frustrates me probably the most about healthcare is when we see the same problems, the same failure modes, the same patient harm being repeated over and over in different organizations. So, the old approach in healthcare, there's a phrase for this. It's described as naming, blaming, and shaming. And that doesn't solve problems. That doesn't prevent future harm. It gets in the way of problem solving. So that's, I think, something that's really important.
All right. Well, Mark Graban.
Parallel.
Sorry.
I would say parallel between the lean approach and what Dr. Deming taught, trying to change that culture.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, consistently, Deming comes up in all of these topics about you can't have a fearful environment, whether it's healthcare or anywhere else. I like what did you say? Naming, blaming, and shaming.
And that's what we're trying to get rid of being more proactive, identifying risks, systemic problems, creating an environment where it's safe for people to speak up and point out near misses. Here are things that could go wrong so that you can solve the problem in advance to prevent harm. And that naming, blaming, shaming culture of fear means people hide and cover up problems, and again, that interferes with quality improvement and process improvement. So that's what we're trying to change with Lean.
All right. Well, Mark Graban, author of Lean Hospitals, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Even if you don't work in healthcare, I highly recommend this book. I mean, first, it's an eye-opener into some of the things that are going on within healthcare. It also gives you a lot of respect for the people who work within what is a really highly regulated, highly scrutinized profession. And also, the other thing I can say about this book is that everything you read in there, it's not just about healthcare. A lot of the stuff, just as we've just heard, could apply equally well to manufacturing, to service industries. It doesn't really matter. The concepts are the same no matter where you go. So, interesting stuff.
Yeah, good stuff there. Good stuff. And of course, we're happy that Mark Graban, great author.
By the way, if you're interested in that book, there is a link. There is a link out to the book underneath the player page there that'll take you out to, I believe it takes you out to his site, and from there you can order the book. And I think there's links also out to Amazon if you want to order from Amazon.
Exactly right.
Yep.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Mark. All right, well, our next article is from a columnist of ours, Michelle LaBrosse, and she's a project manager primarily. And her article is called From Responsibility to Independence, 3 Lessons from Project Management to Break Unproductive Habitual Behaviors. And what LaBrosse is talking about in this article is something that I think many of us really struggle with and deal with on a regular basis, is the difficulties that we have in prioritizing our work activities, our daily work that we need to do to make our work lives, our professions go, right?
Sure.
And solving the issue, as she points out here, really leads to greater independence. And in this context, she's kind of using independence and freedom and really the opportunity to do more with your life are kind of all synonymous there. And really ultimately what she's saying is that you want to do these tasks in such a way that you can free yourself up to pursue your big picture goals. And there's a lot of big picture goals we all want to achieve in our lives. And it's a little bit of an oxymoron. You think about, well, I'm going to be pursuing these big picture goals by doing these small tasks, but it makes a lot of sense. And when she explains it, you see why. There's a couple things she says here, points that she offers that I think are important. One of which is that you want to do your hardest task first.
That was an interesting one.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah,
I think that was one thing she said.
But it made sense when you think about it.
It does, but none of us do that. We all pretty much, when we're faced at the beginning of our day with a series of tasks that we need to do, we oftentimes go for the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff. And I do it pretty much every day. My logic is, well, it's going to get me going. It's going to be something, scratching it off the list is going to get me going. It's going to make me feel good. But what she's saying here is that actually you feel better when you've tackled that big, hairy problem first, and then you get even more momentum because you're like, wow, I did that one. These other ones are going to be a snap, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard to do it from there, but we don't ever do it that way. And the other thing she says, which is really important, is that those big items, those tough ones, are also almost certainly your most important
That's
ones.
true. Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
the ones that you're avoiding doing just because they're hard. They also probably are really important. And that leads to another thing that she said, which I kind of read into a little bit here, but I think is really important, is the idea that, prioritizing these things in the proper way will lead to your big picture goals. One thing she didn't say, which I took away from this, is that really what's going on here, for me at least, is a fear of failure. Those big, tough projects, it's not just that they're hard. Again, it's not just that they take a lot of time. It's that there's some risk involved in those. They're important for your job. They're important for your long-term future, for what you want to do and where you want to go. So you're a little scared of taking them on. But that's where the energy is. That's where what you should be doing lives. And when you know that you have a project that you're kind of scared about a little bit, you got to tackle that one. You got to get over that fear of failure, because it's only by getting over that fear of failure that you begin to get what she calls opportunity, right? The freedom, the independence. I call it opportunity, but she's talking about all of these same things. I mean, because really, there's things we want to do with ourselves and our work life, not just the tactical stuff, but the long-range strategic stuff. And it's not all about making sure that your company makes more money or breaks into a market. It's also about what you want to do and where you want to be as a professional and as a person. I mean, there's things that you don't do every day, or that you do, like maybe mess around on Facebook or watch a TV show. I mean, yeah, sure, it's great. I mean, but those are play Pokemon Go. I mean, these things are great. I mean, it's fine to do that and have some leisure time, but think about what you're risking long term. She uses the analogy of a trip to Hawaii.
Yeah.
You can either maybe take a course that is going to lead you somewhere, or you can take a trip to Hawaii. It's great to take a trip to Hawaii. We all deserve that. But if it means that you're not going to do something that you're going to essentially maybe regret down the line, think about it.
It was a great article. There's a lot of, I think, three ideas, and they're really kind of common sense. And it was like, I mean, I usually like Michelle, but sometimes it's a little. Sometimes she's a little too ethereal for me, but these were like, wow, these were just very practical stuff, real down to earth.
Yeah, so check that one out. Good article from Michelle Bross. As always, all of our articles are right there below our player page. All right, we're going to move on to our next piece now, and it's long been understood that quality only takes root in an organization if and when top management actively supports it. And of course, with the advent of ISO 9001 2015, that understanding has really been codified as the new version of the standard urges leaders to embed quality throughout the enterprise and all of its various undertakings. And of course, the key to improving quality is understanding your processes, and for leaders, that means accumulating and interpreting data. Lots of data from all different sources. Obtaining that information, weighing it, drawing the right conclusions often spells the difference between an organization that has a culture of quality and one that's really just kind of going through emotions, right? I mean, we kind of know that. In his article, Compliance Can't Wait, 3 Steps for Better Quality Leadership, which ran in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, Tim Lozier, Director of Product Strategy for traqpath, delves into these issues and explains how great leaders help leverage information to improve quality. Even better, he's with us now via Skype to give us some further insights on this topic. So Tim, welcome back to Quality Digest Live.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well, yeah. Tim's been on the show a few times, and we're always happy to have him with us. So, Tim, let's start off with the title of your piece: 3 Steps for Better Quality Leadership. So, what are those 3, and why are they so important?
Oh, so you want me to give it away right away?
Sure. Dive right in, man.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd like you'll have to wait for the webinar to see the deep dive on it, but I'll give you this. When we start looking at the ISO 9000 2015 standard, a lot of it focuses around leadership, or a lot of it focuses around having more people in a culture of quality. And so when you start to think about it,
Did we lose Tim?
Well, we may have lost Tim there.
Tim, are you there? Pick right back up if you would.
So, briefly, one of the things to create this culture of quality is around really having centralization of your information. So, a lot of times we find ourselves collecting information from multiple areas, and so one of the areas is the benefits of having it all in one place is you get that visibility into the multiple facets of that information. And that's all fine and good, but that brings me to my second point, is that you really want to be able to have people go back into it frequently and use the data effectively. And how do you do that? A lot of it centers around reminders, being able to pull you back into the system and go back and be able to get in. We all thrive on reminders, and I think that's the biggest thing to change a culture, is that if you can't voluntarily do it, have something that reminds you to go back in. But I think the last part and the most important part is by having that centralization, by being able to pop in and out frequently to update information, you have a lot of data. And when you start to look at that data, it's not enough to just say, okay, well, we have all this data. It's really important. How do you interpret that data? And how do you take that data and create more visibility into areas of improvement? And how do you make that available to the entire company or all the stakeholders who are involved in the quality processes?
Well, you talked about data. I think data is a good place to continue this, because it's really the question, the struggle, especially for really large multinational companies, organizations around the world who have so much data. It's just insane how much data they have to measure and crunch. But what would you say to a leader of a small organization where they say, well, heck, we get along just fine with email and spreadsheets?
Well, I'll say email and spreadsheets are fine until something happens, and then it isn't fine. I think that becomes the issue. And, really what you're seeing is that with the idea of email and spreadsheets, it becomes disparate. It becomes almost like pieces of a puzzle that aren't put together. And I think what's happening is that, are you looking for just fine in your organization? Or are you actually looking for real improvement? And I think just fine is kind of a status quo way to look at things. But if you take all those pieces that are somewhat disparate and you put them together, you actually have a true picture. It's just like a puzzle, right? You have all the different pieces, but when you put that puzzle together, you can look at the data a little bit differently. You can look at things a little differently. You can make better decisions. And really, email is a nice tool, but it's not an effective tool for quality. And so you want to make sure that you are capturing all these, what I like to call conversations of quality, that are happening throughout the whole process. And having a centralized system that collects all that data really creates that true picture, not just the puzzle pieces.
What would you say to a CEO who looks at quality as basically a tactical enterprise, or even worse, a cost center that needs containment more than anything else?
Yeah, there's two things that are at play here, and then there's two things that tend to get in the way, right? So one is having that true picture with everything available to you, and it's one thing to be able to take all that data and interpret it right. But the second part of that is really around how do you speak to the concepts that a CEO might really resonate with. Being able to pull the data, pull reports is one part of it, and that's important. But being able to take that data and translate it into a language, if you will, that a CEO or a C-level is going to speak, really becomes the issue. They may not speak quality, but they may speak on bottom line numbers. They may speak on risk mitigation. They may look at overall cost of quality. And I think having more information at your fingertips, the ability to take more data, take more information, and translate it to the right way is really what's going to change that culture, change that dynamic.
Well, Tim, we're going to leave it off there because we have a webinar, as you alluded to, that we're doing with you. Dirk and you are doing together on Tuesday, the 26th. What are companies doing to promote a culture of quality management? You can see it up there on the screen now. That's this coming Tuesday, the 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And Tim, you'll be joining us then. We'll look forward to talking to you then about this topic. And of course, we encourage everybody in our audience now to sign up for that webinar now and check it out. So Tim, again, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Tim. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well,
we have a really interesting
we do have a tech corner
coming up,
and this is a good one. And it's interesting because it's about the Megarob. And the Megarob is a project that Dirk first saw, and you'll talk about it, Dirk, I know, a couple of weeks ago. Megarob is I believe it's seven different companies, European companies, who joined together to form this project. It's involving, again, as I mentioned, 7 companies, one of which is Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, and they're a close partner of ours, of course. And Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence is the one that Dirk first kind of met with about this at the Hexagon Live event, as I say, a couple weeks back in Anaheim. Yeah, we love doing a tech corner like this. You're going to see a little bit of B-roll in here, and Dirk's going to tell you a little bit more about what he saw. So Dirk, why don't you take it away?
Nice job of vamping there, Mike. Man, we had to kill some time. We have little technical issues.
You know, Dirk, when you tell people I'm vamping, it takes
well, I'm
away
sure they
the quality of the vamping.
And he's just going on and on. No, good job, Mike. Boy, if you weren't there, I would have been really stuck. Okay, you know, when we think of CNC cutting and milling operations, we don't often think of huge construction parts or parts that are longer than, 15, 20 meters or so. And yet, as construction materials and processes evolve, there is a need for higher and higher accuracies, closer tolerances. Think of a huge wind turbine blade, which could be maybe up to 100 feet long, or some of the modern carbon fiber beams used in today's bridge construction. So for parts of that size, there is either no CNC big enough, or the CNC would have to be custom made. Now, it might make sense to go to a custom made CNC solution if the volume of the parts merited the cost, but it doesn't make a lot of economic sense for low volume products, particularly if the accuracy of a really nice CNC isn't needed. So that means currently that really large parts are basically finished, that is, shaped and drilled by hand. And that's where the Megarob comes in. The Megarob is a project that involves 7 partners, as Mike mentioned, in 4 countries throughout Europe, including one of Quality Digest partners, Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. And the goal of Megarob is simply to build a huge, low-cost CNC with accuracies in the 400 micron range. And by huge, I mean a 100-meter CNC. That's a 300-foot long CNC, longer than a football field, and it could be installed anywhere. It doesn't need any kind of special environment. Now, Joel Martin of Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence explained Megarob to me at a recent Hexagon Live show in Anaheim, California.
So the project is Megarob. It was a European initiative to create, as you said, a large-scale manufacturing machine built on essentially an off-the-shelf robot that's hanging from an overhead crane and being driven by a laser tracker. So obviously when you hang a robot upside down from a crane, calibrating it, getting any level of accuracy from that aspect is very, very challenging. So what we did to overcome it was we used the laser tracker to actually guide the end effector of the robot and remove everything else from the chain. So all we're really doing is looking at the end effector of the robot, do milling, drilling, deburring, grinding, polishing, painting, whatever application needs to be done for this large-scale manufacturing process. And having the tracker guide the end effector of the robot to get to the accuracies and the uncertainties that you would use in a traditional small-scale application, but for large-scale parts, 10 meters, 20 meters, 30-meter parts. The goal here is to really get, number one, to make the volumes larger and to make the cost less. So to be able to take a machine that we can do low volume manufacturing where it may be cost prohibitive to do a large scale CNC machine, a 12 meter or a 20 meter NC machine can be incredibly costly. Hanging a robot from an overhead gantry, most people have 90% of that solution already in their shop already.
Did you hear about the list of? Did you hear the list of parts that Joel gave? These are off-the-shelf parts. There's an off-the-shelf overhead crane, a GH overhead crane in this case, but a lot of people make these things. They are essentially off-the-shelf. An off-the-shelf Comau industrial robot hanging upside down from the crane. You can see it in the picture there, and a CNC head built of off-the-shelf parts, and an off-the-shelf Leica laser tracker from Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, and of course all the adapter plates and cables and so forth that kind of glue it all together. Now, the secret sauce in all this is the software that allows the laser tracker to control the robot. And this is where the trick comes in. You see, the accuracy of a traditional CNC lies in the actual build of the CNC, the rigidity of the CNC, as well as its error mapping software. So the accuracy is self-contained, so to speak. With the Megarob, the accuracy is based on the ability of the laser tracker, an outside element, to monitor the position of the cutting head and feed corrections back to the robot so that the head is kept on track. So concerns like temperature or the overall stiffness of the machine structure are much less of a concern. Here's how it works on a small scale demo.
So obviously bringing a 20-meter machine here would be a little challenging, so we shrunk the demonstration down. The idea of what we're showing right now, we have an off-the-shelf robot, nothing different done to it, being tracked by the T-Mac on the end effector and the laser tracker tracking the robot. And to show the idea of instability of hanging a robot from a crane, we basically put the robot on a translation slide. The slide is moved by a human, so there's no correction or calibration to the slide. And what you're seeing is as the robot draws the shapes, so we're drawing a circle, a hexagon, and a square, and we're going to draw it once in an uncorrected format. And as I move the joystick of the robot, the slide is moving an unknown amount. So as far as the robot's concerned, it's following a trajectory path. And as you can see, the shapes are now skewed because the robot base moves, the robot program is uncorrected, so it draws a shape that isn't looking like what the shape should look like. When we rerun the program and we use the laser tracker to drive the end effector, you can see the base of the robot still moving in an unknown amount, but now the end effector of the robot is being corrected by the laser tracker in real time at 1,000 hertz, and what we end up with is shapes that are correct. So regardless of where the base of the robot is, regardless of if the robot was hanging upside down from an overhead crane with temperature variation, vibration, swaying in the wind, the end effector is doing exactly what we're telling it to do in a precision path.
Well, that was a small scale demo, and demos always work great, right? That's why they're demos. But how well does the actual machine work? Well, you heard Joel say earlier that the current Megarob, which is still in development, is about 20 meters long. So what is that, 64, 65 feet? Long enough to machine a composite part for, say, a bridge, which a company called Acciona did. It looks something like this one. This is a composite footbridge built by Acciona in Madrid. It's a typical construction of most of Acciona's composite bridges. The beams that make up the bridge are similar to a bridge piece that was just machined by the Megarob for Acciona, and we can see it here. This is a 12 meter by 1.5 meter by 2 meter composite beam built of carbon fiber, and we can watch here as it's being cut on the Megarob. If we can run that little clip. In the past, after layup, this piece would have taken about 20 hours of manual cutting and drilling with hand tools to get to the needed tolerances. With the Megarob, it only took 6 hours. So we're talking roughly 3 days on the site versus 1 day on the site to get these same accuracies. Now, as for accuracy, in the past, the finish tolerance on the contour, on the shape, was about 12 millimeters or half an inch. With the Megarob, the finish tolerance was 300 microns or about 1/100th of an inch. In the past, hole positions were within 4 millimeters, so a 1/7, 1/8 of an inch. With the Megarob, hole positions were held to within 50 microns. That's 2/1000ths of an inch. So it's way faster and way more accurate than what you traditionally have been able to see finishing parts by hand. Not to mention it's a lot safer. Now there are some caveats to the Megarob. One is accuracy. It's a few hundred microns as opposed to maybe 50 microns on a true CNC machine, if you actually had access to a CNC machine that big. And the other caveat is that currently you are limited to soft materials, no harder than, let's say, soft aluminum alloys. So really what we're talking about at this point is carbon fiber and the like. Those are the obvious materials right now. So what does this actually all mean? Well, think about it. If your tolerances are only in the few hundred micron range, then this technology means that you can do CNC finishing work almost anywhere you can find a big warehouse. So think about installing a huge CNC in a warehouse or on or near the job site. Think of the ramifications that has for construction. You know, rather than, let's say, finish parts somewhere off-site and then ship them to the site, you could have unfinished parts, beams for instance, composite beams in this case, sitting in a warehouse on site and then finish them as needed. You could literally make changes on contours, on hole positions in CAD overnight, put them onto the Megarob, and by the next morning, you would have your finished part. It's an amazing project. Really what it stands to do, I think, for construction and large-scale construction is really pretty amazing, is pretty groundbreaking, I think. So that's it. That's the Megarob from
Hexagon Manufacturing
Hexagon
Intelligence.
Metrology, one of our partners. And as I said, if you want to see more information on the Megarob, there's a link that goes out there. There's actually also some interesting videos on there as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Dirk. Thank you for that great tech corner this week from Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence and everyone else there involving with the Megarob. So, Dirk, why don't you wrap the show right from where you are, and we'll go on from there.
Well, thanks again for joining us on the show today. We did have I should point out, I'm sorry, they don't like when I do this. We did have a couple of technical problems. We were down to one camera, so a little bit of shifting around here. So, thanks for joining us for the show. And thanks to Mark Graban, author of Lean Hospitals, and Tim Lozier of ETQ. Watch for the upcoming webinar that is going to be coming up next week, next Tuesday. That is the What Are Companies Doing to Promote a Culture of Quality Management, Tuesday, July 26, 2016, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And again, thanks for Megarob for providing us with a lot, Megarob and Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence for supplying us with a lot of the video that we needed for this morning's tech segment. And that is it. You all have a great week, and we will see you on the next Quality Digest Live. So long.